More histology. So today we're going to talk about how epithelial tissues are named and categorized, and then we are going to get into some of the simple epithelial tissues. So, all right, so when we are naming epithelial tissues generally, and there are exceptions to this, but this is a good place to generally start. Usually epithelial tissues are going to have three names. Okay, so for instance, let's look at this as an example. Simple squamous epithelium. What does that mean? Okay, so the first word, simple, refers to how many layers of cells do you run into if you go from the apical surface to the basement membrane. And really, basically, there's two possibilities and then a little strange one. So a simple epithelium is actually going to have just one layer of cells from the top to the bottom. And the alternative to a simple epithelium is a stratified epithelium. And it's got multiple layers of cells. Do you see? And the nuclei are usually a really good indicator as to how many layers of cells you have. So a simple versus a stratified. And then as a caveat, we also have one tissue that's called pseudostratified. It looks stratified, but it's really not. But basically simple and stratified are our possibilities for here, with one exception. There is one pseudostratified. And then the second word is usually referring to what the shape of a cell is. Okay, so the three general categories of the shapes of the cells. This one's called squamous. It kind of sounds like squashed. To me, squamous cells often look like a fried egg from the side. They're usually even flatter than that. Let me show you a squamous cell. So this is a squamous cell right there. Okay, it's also simple. It's only one layer. So squamous, really, really thin individual cells, and the nucleus is sometimes the thickest part of the cell. And then a cuboidal cell right here are about as wide as they are tall, kind of little square cells. Usually they have nice round nuclei like that, not always, but usually. And then the last type of cell is called a columnar cell, and it's tall and skinny like a column. So it's much taller than it is wide, usually, but not always. It has an oval nucleus, and quite often the nucleus is toward the bottom of the cell or the basal surface. So, and then the last word, so if I had a simple squamous epithelium, the last word is going to almost always be epithelium. Actually, maybe always be epithelium. So the word simple is an adjective. The word squamous is an adjective. The word epithelium is a noun. So this is really important when you are doing lecture or lab. If you leave off the word epithelium, and a lot of people just say simple squamous, stratified cuboidal, it's not right because you've just given me two adjectives and no noun. So simple squamous what? Epithelium, kumquat, mountain, I don't know what it is. So that's my one criticism of this figure that I used last time that sort of introduces you because, oh no, that one is cuboidal. I thought it left off epithelium, but it didn't. Okay, so now we are going to get into the naming convention of all of the tissues. So a simple squamous epithelium, a stratified cuboidal epithelium, a simple columnar epithelium. So they're named using this technique, which is a great starting point, but there is always an exception. You've probably noticed that in biology, you are going to find an exception if you look hard enough. So sometimes they'll have more than another word added. For instance, we have a ciliated simple columnar epithelium because it's got a little extra going on. Sometimes it's going to have other modifications to the name. And then there's one or two tissues that just aren't used, don't use this naming convention. But I'll point them out to you as we go through. So now let's start meeting our simple tissues. Okay, our simple epithelial tissues. So the simple tissues, because they are simple, are going to be relatively thin. So in this figure right here, you're actually seeing two different types. And in your textbook, a lot of times they are going to have both the histology image and then a drawing of it so that you can see what it's looking at. This one is trying to show you one tissue, but it's actually got two on it. So let's talk about both of them right now. So This tissue is simple because I see a single layer of cells from the apical surface until the tissue changes type. I recognize that you can't see the basement membrane in this one, but when the tissue really dramatically changes type, it's a good indication that you are leaving, of course, the epithelial tissue. So this is simple. And simple what? What is the shape of those cells? They're squamous, right? So this is a simple squamous epithelium. Now, is this tissue going to be very protective? No. Most simple tissues are not very good for protection. What would be really good for protection is this one that we looked at before, like this one, right? It is not simple, obviously, okay? It's got a whole bunch of layers. So a lot of times what simple tissues, you're going to find them doing kinds of transport, because if you're relatively thin, you're pretty good at transport. So they do absorption, secretion, filtration. Anytime you really do not want to have an impediment to transport, that's a good thing to put there. So for this tissue right here, for instance, you would find it, among other places, you would find it forming the alveoli of the lungs, in which we're supposed to get a whole bunch of oxygen and carbon dioxide across, and we really don't want any impediments to doing that. But even though this image is not trying to show you that, I've got another simple tissue on the other side. This tissue is simple. Again, look at the nuclei. I've got one layer, but it's not squamous. What is it? What is this tissue? This is the lumen right here, right? This is actually simple cuboidal epithelium, okay? So let's look at that one. So simple squamous epithelium is what they were trying to show you here, okay? And then this one right here is another simple cuboidal epithelium. Now let's look at what kind of section this is. This is a tube. I did a section that's a longitudinal section. Here's the lumen in the middle. Can I tell that it's an epithelium? I can, because the cells are right next to one another. There's a free surface, and then the other surface has stuff stuck to it. That's a good indication that it's an epithelium. I can tell that it's simple, one layer of cells, okay, till I get to the basement membrane. And it's cuboidal. Cuboidal because the cells are about as wide as they all are tall. This is a simple cuboidal epithelium. It's a longitudinal section of a simple cuboidal epithelium. You could also have cross sections, and I'll show you those at a later time. Okay, so that is simple cuboidal epithelium, and now let's introduce you to some of the other simple tissues. Okay, simple columnar epithelium, and there's two different kinds of simple columnar epithelium. I will find those for you because I didn't pull them up. 4.3C and 4.3D. Okay, so these two tissues right here, there are actually two different categories of simple columnar epithelia. So let's figure out why they're simple columnar. So if I go from the apical surface down, how many layers of nuclei do I see? I see one layer, right? So it's simple. And the cells are taller than they are wide, so it's columnar, okay? So this is called simple columnar epithelium. But there's another kind of simple columnar epithelium, because this is generally referred to as just straight simple columnar epithelium, not with the word straight, just simple columnar epithelium. But then its friend right here is actually ciliated simple columnar epithelium. So let's look at this one. So go from here to here. Don't look over here. And when I make quizzes for you, I'll point to the area of the tissue that's least confusing to ask you the question. So from here to here, again, apical surface down to the bottom, I see one layer of nuclei, right? And then the cells are about as taller than they are wide, right? So it's simple columnar epithelium. But this one has something special on its surface. Basically looks like it's got bedhead. So this is what we call ciliated simple columnar epithelium, and it gets one extra word. So in the next video, I will teach you how to tell the difference between what you're seeing here, which kind of looks like it's highlighted on the surface. That's microvilli. Teach you how to tell the difference between microvilli and cilia in the next video.